What up? Wade here. Welcome back to the interview series of The Wade Alter Show. And so today I have a very special guest. His name is Adam Matthews. He's got a company called Apotheo. And so what it's for, it helps personal trainers track their clients' results. So everything from, diet plans, it connects with MyFitnessPal, it removes things like email support. And it's amazing to see how his clients have really scaled their businesses so much faster through using the software that he has. And it's been cool for me because he's been a client of mine to see his business grow from just an idea of him starting off, being in the IT field, having a successful job, he had a great career, but it didn't give him the freedom that he wanted. And so he had this idea for a piece of software that came out of, we'll get into the story, a really great sort of solution to a problem that one of his friends was having. And now looking at it years later, and we go through the process of what took for him to monetize, to scale, to delegate effectively, to create a multi-six-figure successful business where the growth rate month over month, it's crazy to see the growth. It's amazing to see the success that the clients are having, how much they love it, to the point where he doesn't even really need to do sales. It's just building and growing off of referrals at this point. And so what we get into is how he created that. And hopefully, if you have an idea for a business, it'll inspire you and give you some tactics to use to scale even faster and live the life you want. As always, enjoy. All right. So Adam, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Nice. So Adam has been a longtime client of mine, and I thought he would be great to have on the show because he's just got a really great story of, a business that is flourishing. I think you're definitely somebody who puts the lifestyle first too, of being able to really, the gains in the gym and kind of traveling and scuba diving and all the fun stuff with that. But also just kind of knowing your story of where you came from. I think a lot of guys are in a similar situation. So I thought it'd be a really big sort of just a lot of learning lessons and inspirational aspects to it too, So I guess to kind of start off, just give us like where you were when we met, or even maybe before then, kind of, because you had already had the idea of Apotheo, I think at the time then, but I don't think you were using it yet. Was it? So I guess just kind of get into that.
Yeah, I guess I kind of came up with the idea when I moved to Austin. Obviously, I'm from England originally. I moved to Austin, and it was around the time when everybody had these kind of earn 1K on the side courses, and everyone's talking about getting a side hustle, that kind of stuff. And I had a few ideas, and some of them were fitness related. So I was talking to a friend of mine who's actually an online coach, and I tried a couple of things with her, but just kind of got her to look at it, got her clients to look at it. They didn't really go anywhere. And the whole time she'd been saying to me that she could really use something to help her keep track of all of her online clients, like all of their progress pictures, all their measurements, that kind of stuff. And eventually I listened to her. And so I made like the very first version of this, of Apotheo, and kind of played around with it on the side for a couple of years. Never really got that big. And then about 2.5 years ago now, I was kind of in a good position to quit my job and just focus on it full time. And now that's my full-time income.
So had you made any, because you were like a programmer by nature, right? Like for your career and stuff.
Not really. I was a security consultant. So I was looking at code, and I was always playing with technology, looking at websites, testing them for security vulnerabilities, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And I've done some like simpler coding just to make like little hacking tools and stuff for whatever we were looking at. But I'd never really considered myself like a full-blown developer.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say now, kind of as you have like a team of developers and stuff too, if somebody's coming into kind of the software realm and has this business idea, do you think it's a good idea, or do you feel like you need to have a certain level of proficiency? Because I've definitely had certain clients that are like, I have this idea for this app, but then it's like, if it was like no exposure to kind of coding at all, I guess now as you've kind of surrounded yourself with other successful kind of software startups and stuff too, what sort of advice could you give to someone?
Firstly, I'd probably say pick something easier. If I think it would be better to have easier and quicker to get up and running if you have like a product or something. The whole kind of like coaching and then product model seems like it would be a lot easier. I was like technical enough that it was easier for me to hire developers, and I actually wrote the very first version of it myself. And then like once it started making a bit of money, I hired developers. And then because I did a computer science degree as well, like I know people that are doing development, so I was able to ask them for advice. But I think also talking to friends of mine that have ideas and stuff, they kind of want to go straight to making an app when it's something that you could, like, I think you should test it as cheaply and quickly as you possibly can to find out if it's actually a good idea and if people are going to pay for it. So a lot of the time, just like the coaches that use my software were doing, like they didn't need an app to do that. They were doing it with spreadsheets and Google Drive and getting by that way. Like, that was their full-time income. They didn't have an app to do anything. So if you've got an idea for something, I would just think of the cheapest, simplest way you can do it. Even if you're doing it manually and you're just like pretending that there's an app behind it, like someone signs up for a service and it's over email, and you're pretending that it's some automated thing, but really you're doing everything for them. That could be a way to test something without having to spend tons of money on developing an app.
Yeah, I love it. Like the whole minimum viable product side of things, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I remember I had one other client who it was that he was going to invest over 10 grand in an app. I'm like, dude, if you really, when he broke down the actual steps, I think it didn't even really need a proper sort of login, but like maybe like at most it was like a login and then like a single, so I'm like, you could do this on like a WordPress plugin of sorts, find a way to use PayPal to invoice people or something like that. And literally like, you don't even need, website or web design sort of experience. You can kind of just, get a form or like put a Google form on there or some shit, like you said, So I like that. I guess kind of go through those initial steps from this is an idea, there's a problem to solve, to how do I monetize this? And kind of, it'd be cool even again, I know we've talked about like pricing and kind of some of that stuff and just how the organic sales process came to be.
Well, I think so. The first thing was just listening to what my friends actually wanted, because the whole time I was focused on my own idea of like what I wanted to make, and she kept saying to me that she had this problem, and it literally probably took me like at least a month to even hear that. And so the way I used to think was that you kind of come up with an idea, a really good idea for something, and then everyone would want it, and then you'd sell it and make tons of money. And I think that only works if you're like Steve Jobs and you think of something that people don't even know that they need, but once they have it, everyone, everyone's got an iPhone now. So I think like coming up with an idea, the easiest thing is just to listen to what people want. Obviously, it probably needs to be something that you're interested in. So I'd had an online coach before, so I knew how it worked, and I could see that there would be a much more efficient way to do it. And also there's a bunch of similar apps to what I have. So, not quite the same. I think what I'm doing is like a bit of a different niche, but if other people are already doing it in some form, then that's kind of validation that it could be a good idea, or like at least you could make a business out of it. And I think a lot of people get put off by that. They look at it and see like, oh, someone else is doing it, I have to think of something completely new. I wish I could say like I had some strategy for the pricing to start with, but I really didn't. I just made it up, and it seemed like a reasonable price to charge. I think actually what I did was I thought, how much would I be happy with? And then said that, and she was like, yeah, that's fine. Now that I've learned a bit more about it, there are a few blog posts and stuff that have things on pricing. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but all the kind of, there's a few like software as a service blogs and things, and people that talk about that stuff, different pricing models.
Mm-hmm. And then related to kind of the sales process, because I think that's what's interesting. Like I was just talking for another episode with Trip Kramer, and so he's a big YouTuber, and I was kind of highlighting the point that people are thinking, oh, how do I grow my YouTube channel more and more and more? And that's like the hacks that he was giving. But really what I was talking about, what I called like old man business practices related to like proper sales process, how to do follow-up, how to delegate effectively. And I think I'd love to hear kind of from you too, because I think when people see software, one thing they're like, oh, it's just, you create the app and like people buy it and then like it just runs and I don't have to do anything. But also the other side of like, I love how the way you built this business was truly, as close to door as not like you're going gym to gym here, but it really was a grassroots guerrilla sort of tactic. So I'd love to kind of have you get into that a little bit.
Yeah, that's true actually. So I think I used to think that way, that you just put a sales page up and then magically people would find it and buy something from you. But yeah, actually the way that I grew it to this point was I had that one coach who was a friend, and like I think with anything, if you can't even get one of your friends to buy it, then how are you going to get someone else to buy it? I think the next coach was like a friend of hers. And then I basically just went on Instagram, found online coaches, and then just started emailing them. And it's like some of them, well, probably a lot of them, you never hear anything back from. Some of them will get annoyed that you're emailing them. And you get a few angry people like telling you to fuck off and stop spamming them. But then probably more often than the people that are angry, I was getting replies like, oh my God, this is exactly what I'm looking for. This is like, you really hit like what their problem is. So I was emailing saying, like I saw that you're doing online coaching. I've been working with this person and it's helped her do this. And then I'd send a couple of other emails after that and just kind of say like, once you get to 20 clients, if you're doing everything with spreadsheets and Google Drive, you've got all these windows open, it's a mess, like it's a pain for your clients, it takes you so much time, you're losing money because you have to keep track of payments yourself. And then just telling them like how the software solves all of those problems. And then I get these like really enthusiastic responses from them. When you find the right one who it really would be a good fit for. And then it's just easy, like just speak to them over Skype, show them how everything works and just get them set up. And so I was probably doing that for about a year, maybe a bit longer than that. And now I just get all sort of referrals and word of mouth.
Mm-hmm. And do you have a system for the referrals?
No, not really, not at the moment. I tried doing like a referral scheme where, like they would get a free month, but that didn't really seem to motivate anyone to give me referrals. I think part of it is they kind of, some of them see the other coaches as their competition, so they don't, and using the software as an advantage, so they don't necessarily want to give that away. But then the ones that do give me a lot of referrals are just kind of motivated to, they're just the kind of people that would just help anyway, and just kind of, they want to help the other coaches, they want to help me get more business and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
So it's all just kind of pretty organic.
Let's dive into some of the sort of hiccups or mistakes along the way. What would you say, if you could look back, what were like one or two big turning points that if it didn't happen, like that you could learn from to kind of pass on to people, we'll say?
I think I had a big one like last year. It was about 18 months after I quit my job, and it was growing, but not really as quickly as I would like it to. And I was on the verge of like at least going back to work part-time. And then I thought about it and I was like, okay, sending the emails is working. If I really double down on this, I should be able to get to what my like initial goal was in terms of revenue. And so I did that and basically just worked harder, stuck with it. And then within about a month, I hit that goal. And it's like, okay, this could be a real business.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what is your definition of like, what needed to happen to be like, this is a real business, right? Because I know for myself, like it was almost exactly about a year. And I think a big part of it was actually having the numbers and being like, and looking back and going, wow, like one, I've been out of a job for like a year, but two, like I can see the track record. And that gave me the confidence to be like, I don't even say like I'm a successful entrepreneur, but I'm like, I'm a business owner. Holy crap, What was kind of that criteria for yourself?
Well, my first goal was like just 10K a month, basically. So yeah, and in the space of the month, once I really sort of doubled down on sending out the emails and just like, because it was already working, but I was not so consistent with it. Once I doubled down on that, I got a bunch of new coaches in the space of a month, and then that just increased the revenue to what I was aiming for.
Mm-hmm.
I think the stuff that I've read recently that I wish I'd read earlier on is that generally takes about 3 years to get a business to the point where it's going to cover all of your expenses. So I'm about two and a half years now, just under 2.5 years. And so a few months ago, it got to the point where the business was making as much as my previous salary. So that was another kind of big milestone. But I think just like, if I'd read that before, then I would have known like it's going to take longer than I thought originally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I call that my new phrase for that. It's like the 3-year slog.
Oh yeah,
it's got to kind of slog along for 3 years. Especially too, it's like, if you got a significant other or something, just kind of being like, I'm going into this. I think Gary Vaynerchuk has the whole eat shit for 2 years.
Yeah, basically. It might even be longer than that.
Yeah, I think it is more like 3. Yeah.
If you want the freedom and all the stuff that comes with having your own business, then like you got to eat the shit for 3 years, or the glass, or whatever he says.
Oh, yeah. I think that's one of the founders of Microsoft, the E-Class one. One thing I want to kind of hammer home is, I think this is going to be just theme of the podcast too, is that consistently, I think as an entrepreneur, there's always an opportunity to create a new revenue stream, or, create a new product or new service, or create a new marketing funnel. And as an entrepreneur, inherently you have that visionary aspect too. And one of the challenges of the visionary is you get bored really easily. Whereas so much is just about doubling down on what's already working and kind of sticking to it, And it's like, I remember when I saw Tony Robbins, like the UPW event, and I knew word for word every story that he said. I knew like the punchlines. I knew like where he was going to do the joke and stuff like that. And I'm thinking, this guy has done this, for 30 years straight. But then I also turn around and I see 5,000 people there. And now I think it's like 15,000 or 20,000 going to these events. And so it just shows, or even like a band like Aerosmith or whatever, some Bon Jovi or something. They've been playing that like Living on the Prayer song. Everyone is going there to hear that damn song. And it's like finding a way to still be passionate about it and love it, because it's like, what works, just stick to what works versus constantly changing things, I think that's something within your, the little experience I have inside your app and stuff too. It's like, I don't want to say it's light on features, but I think from us talking, you've definitely gotten more stringent with, okay, do I add this bell and whistle versus like stick to what is good? Would that be accurate?
Yeah, I think so. I guess related to this, at one point I was thinking, oh, maybe I should do Facebook ads. Maybe I should, do Instagram ads. And then I thought about it, and it's like, well, it's going to take me a while to learn how to do that, or at least like learn how to do it well enough. And the emails were working, so it's just like, fuck, just stick with the emails and just do more of that. So, but yeah, with features, I mean, certain things like having a training plan builder, so the coach can like plug in all the exercises and say how many sets and reps to do. There's a lot of other software that has that, but now I kind of look at how are most of the coaches that I work with, what do they actually use? And most of them are like only interested in nutrition. So, I mean, that's a pretty big thing that we could do, but it's just not really going to add that much value to it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, now I just kind of focus on what's going to add the most value to the most people and prioritize things that way.
Yeah, love it. Let's dive into a little bit related to the wonderful moment when you were able to quit the job completely there. What were the biggest factors, whether they're like internal mindset shifts or external sort of, I need to have this much savings? Like, what was the thing that got you off the edge to really take the leap?
It was a combination of things. So I was in kind of a weird position where like I was pretty senior. I was kind of the highest level of like consultant. And really the next progression for me would be running a regional office. And I thought about like, well, is that really what I want to do? How am I going to enjoy that much? And the answer was probably not. The other things were, yeah, obviously the money aspect of it. So I was like, that was pretty lucky. So I just sold my place in the UK. So I had a bit of money I could live on, had some savings I could live on for a while, just to give this a shot and still be able to pay my bills. And I think another big thing was I thought if I didn't do this, that I would really regret it. If I knew that I had a chance to do this, I'd really regret it. And then something else that I've considered with a lot of decisions, so like moving to a different country, all kinds of things, I'll look at what the worst case scenario is. And I think this is something that Tim Ferriss talks about. And really, like quitting my job, the worst case scenario was that I'd spend a year trying to start a business. It didn't work. I'd have spent some of my savings and then I just go back to my old job. So I wouldn't really have been any worse off doing that.
Nice.
It's probably true for most people. I mean, like as long as you don't kind of quit in a rage and like burn your bridges, then you could probably go back to whatever your job was before.
Yeah, I've seen it. I think of it, with a few clients even, to where whether it was maybe the business model that didn't work properly, or they just realized certain aspects of the job they actually liked and things like that. I've seen it a few times where every time it's happened, it ended up being like, one, it was the biggest thing that was talked about on the interview, but the job that they got was like significantly like leapfrog ahead of if they would have just stayed there and got their little 10% promotion sort of thing. They were able to kind of and find something that fit them better. Because I think, when you do those sort of things of like, I'm going to regret this if I don't do it. And then all of a sudden you get the feedback. Then if you do go back, you really know what you want, because you're like, okay. So for one guy, it was like he wanted a manager that he could respect. And that's actually why I didn't like the other career. And then the other one was just having an entrepreneurial aspect and like the team, which he didn't have previously, So I think that's a big thing. People think it's such a bigger risk. It's like, oh no, what about my resume? There's going to be this gap. And it's like, well, the right company, I don't even know if you'd put it on the resume, but if you talk about it, what's on the gap? Like, oh, I went off and started a business. The type of company you want to work for, because you have that drive in you, is probably going to be like, wow, that's really great. Like, tell me about it.
Yeah, I think especially these days, like I think now, like being an entrepreneur is a bit like over glamorized. So I think that's probably going to look really good in your resume that you quit to try and start a business. But also you're going to learn a ton of new skills from trying to start a business, and that's you can take that back to whatever job you go back to, or a different job. So you're still. I figured I'm still going to learn a ton during this year. Probably learn more than I would have done if I had stayed at my previous job. So, I've definitely learned more than I would have learned if I stayed at my previous job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let's kind of dive into moving ahead. So if you look at, let's say, I just kind of want to get your mindset just for people to model of what does the next 6 to 12 months look like for you in your business?
I think the biggest thing right now is, so I just read Built to Sell. And I also read another book by the Tropical MBA guys called like Before the Exit, thought experiments for if you're thinking of selling your company. And not that I'm thinking of selling the company, but I think there's a lot of overlap between building a business where you're, like working on the business instead of in the business, and where you actually have some freedom. Like if you wanted to sell your company, then the company needs to function without you. Like it can't be totally reliant on you. So that fits really well with what my goals are of having freedom to like travel whenever I want, live wherever I want. So kind of focused on that at the moment, and just building more systems, getting the business to the point where I'm not the bottleneck anymore. Because obviously up until this point, I've been doing a bit of everything. Now I'm doing way less development. And so that's not quite like 100%, but mostly handled by the development team. So like I just speak to the coaches, find out what kind of stuff they need, and then just say to the developers, okay, we need to build this, and they build it, they test it, and then our QA like make sure everything works how it's meant to, and then it goes live. So I still kind of give everything the final approval and look at it, but what I want to do is get to the point where I just say, okay, we need this, and then it just gets done, and I don't have to be too involved in the development side of things anyway. Because like I said, I don't consider myself a developer, and so these guys are actually way better at that stuff than me. My time is more valuable spent just kind of getting to know what the coaches need and just making the product like fit them even better.
Nice. This question's popped up. I think I'm gonna start asking it every time. Like, how many hours do you work a week?
I probably work at least 40 hours, but sometimes more. It kind of depends. The last couple of weeks I've been traveling a little bit. If you count it as work, then last week I went and visited some of the coaches and hung out at their gym, and then just talked to them about what kind of stuff is taking them a long time. And we came up with some ideas for just new features that are going to just make things even more efficient from them. So if you count that as work, then yeah, at least 40 hours, but it's more enjoyable than my previous job. So I'm spending less time doing stuff that I don't want to do than I would be in a, kind of day job.
Mm-hmm. I like this. This is going to be a question, I think, every episode. Because I think on the one hand, you have the people like the Gary Vee, like, you got to work 78 hours a week, that side of thing. But then you have the 4-hour work week, Tim Ferriss. And I kind of think I ascribe to that more, where he's like, the 4 hours is the shit that you kind of don't want to do. But the rest of the time, yeah, you're working maybe 50, 60 hours a week, but it's not work. It doesn't feel like work. Like if you're off in, Mexico eating sushi with personal trainers and stuff like that, even though that is a big part of what you're doing today with your business, right? It's like, you can't really label that as work, I guess. You know what I mean? Like if it's fun,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. It's still fun. Yeah, I think one of the things that a lot of people that want to start a business, or at least people that I've spoken to, kind of think that they're going to make something and then, then they it just works on its own. They make an app or something and then they just make a ton of money off the app and they never have to work again. Or they think that they're going to work really hard for a few years and then retire to the beach. But I think if you've been like working your ass off for 5 years or something and sell your company, at that point you're not going to be the type of person that could just sit on the beach and do nothing. You just be bored. So yeah, I think it's more important to kind of like just reduce the amount of time that you spend doing stuff that you don't want to do, and then just focus on what you enjoy doing, build the systems and get the people around you that can do the stuff that you don't want to do or you're not so good at. And then you just focus on the stuff that is your zone of genius kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I guess what I would say too, kind of playing off of that, is you got to be somewhat either passionate about what you're selling, or at least the people that you're working with. I think too often people are like, oh, this is a great idea. And that's where they're coming from, that mindset of like, oh, it'll make some great money, but then I can kind of just sell it, or I don't have to think about it, or I don't have to worry about it. Versus like, it should be the type of thing where you're like, I could do this for 10 years. So I could do this for 20 years because I love working with these people.
Yeah, totally. That was actually something that I didn't think about too much when I started doing this. But recently I realized like the best thing about this is the people that are using it. Like all the coaches that I'm working with, they're all entrepreneurs. They've all got their own businesses, like mostly, well, actually all of them, they're online. Like a couple of coaches I visited recently are living in Mexico. They're Canadian, but like they just wanted to live in Mexico, and they can because their businesses are online. So we're kind of similar. We're similar in that way that, obviously I'm not living where I was born, but I'm living here because this is where I wanted to live. And yeah, my business is all online. So it's cool getting to talk to these coaches and like getting to know them and working with them.
Nice. Cool. Well, let's dive into the lightning round here. I got some questions for you, a little rapid fire. First one, what are your top 3 books and why?
I guess I don't really have any favorite books. There's usually the kind of stuff that I'm interested in at the moment. So the ones I mentioned, Built to Sell, Before the Exit. I'm trying to think what else I've read recently.
I'd say, what's the one you've recommended to the most people over the years?
I think kind of a classic one, and actually the thing that got me sort of started, not necessarily doing exactly what I am now, but kind of just on the journey of like leaving the UK. So I went to live in Thailand and I was contracting. So I had like a fully remote, I had my own business, but it was still sort of time for money. But that was a 4-hour work week. And that was where I first read I think he calls it fear setting, where it's just basically like, think of what the worst case scenario is. And I think that helped me develop the mindset of like keeping my options open as well. So always planning things so that I'm going to learn a lot, but minimizing any downside. So same thing then when I left, the worst case was like, I run out of money, go back to London and go back to my old job or just get another job doing the same thing.
What's your favorite lifestyle hack?
Favorite lifestyle hack? I've seen a few people kind of against it recently, but I think having a morning routine that works really well for me, just getting up, doing the same thing every morning. So like I get up, do the 5-minute journal, meditate, have a greens shake, and then just get into work. So I think just like not having to think about that, just doing the same thing, making it a habit, then it's like I don't wake up and sort of wonder what to do or get distracted and get sucked into something else. I just get up, even if I don't feel like it, I'll do that. And then that just kind of like sets me on that path to have a productive day.
Nice. Yeah. Who's against the morning routine? Because I'm all about that.
Yeah, I've seen a few people recently posting on Instagram and they're like, oh, you don't need to have a morning routine. Actually, I mean, I guess, and like anything, it's not fair. Everyone, like there's more than one way to do things. I think Ramit Sethi doesn't really speak against it, but he's mentioned that like he gets up and like just flicks through Instagram, and it's kind of hard. You can't really say that he's not a successful entrepreneur. So obviously it doesn't work for everybody. But
I think what's interesting too, I guess being an authority on some level myself, it's always been like, well, what level is the other person at? And so kind of being like, I could see like if you're Steve Jobs and he's trying to be like, oh, I'm just hanging out and I'm just going to watch some TV. You got some employees knocking on your door and you got shit going on where you're like, you can't get away with that sort of stuff based on your environment, I think a bit too, But I would say in general, especially if you're starting off, it's like, like Stephen Pressfield talks about in the War of Art, where he's like with your 9 to 5, your day job, like there's structure there and it forces structure. So in a lot of ways you have to create structure, I feel, as an entrepreneur. And so, yeah, I've always been a huge proponent of the morning routine. And then also to set the morning up right, you got to do the day before. So you know, like what you're going to work on in the morning and what time you go to bed and stuff like that, So love that one. I got one more for you. So knowing what you know today, what would you tell the 20-year-old version of yourself?
I'm not sure I would, to be honest. Like, I think if I changed things then, like I wouldn't be where I am today, and I'm pretty happy with that. So yeah, I think there's just like certain things I had to learn, had to figure out for myself. And like it's like that it's that Steve Jobs commencement speech. Like if I look back at certain things now, it's like everything has kind of come together, and like if there's just certain things that didn't happen, I couldn't see how I would be where I'm at now. So even stuff that would seem completely unrelated. So a lot of the coaches that I'm working with now, I've met through a coach who went to school with a guy that I used to work with, and he moved to the US about the same time as me. I never knew him when I was in the UK, but it's just totally random that like two guys working security, like he went to school with a guy who then became an online coach. He did this nutrition course. In the Facebook group for that course, they were talking about what software they use, and that's how I've gotten like a ton of clients, a ton of customers recently. So yeah, I don't think I would change anything. I don't think I would give myself any advice. Just let me figure it out.
Yeah, just figure it out on the fly. I like that. Nice. Well, I definitely know that I have in my mix people that are, personal trainers, stuff like that, as well as I think it's just good to have other people model. So where can people find out about your software?
Apotheo.com. It's APOTHEO.
And what is it? Give it like, what's the 30-second elevator pitch?
Well, it's designed specifically for online coaches. So it handles everything from like when a client applies to work with you, you can have an application form embedded on your website, keeps track of all of those. When they sign up, it has all the sign up forms are built in, like it handles their payment, and then basically just keeps track of everything on an ongoing basis. So whenever they send you an update every week with like their progress pictures and measurements, just puts all of those on one page. You can sync all of their nutrition stuff from MyFitnessPal or whatever they use to track their diet, and links with their Fitbit, so you can see all their sleep and their steps, and it just keeps everything organized, really.
Nice. I didn't know about the Fitbit. That's good. New features. Well, yeah, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks again.
All right.